From the outside, my life probably looked picture perfect. Mark and I, the couple who had it all, smiling at dinner parties, sharing inside jokes, taking vacations that everyone seemed to envy. But lately, something felt off. I can't even tell you exactly when it started. Maybe it was the way he kissed me goodbye, just a little too distracted, or how his smile no longer reached his eyes. At first, I told myself it was just work stress. But that little knot in my stomach kept getting tighter, no matter how hard I tried to ignore it. The late nights became more frequent, his excuses too polished. "Just another meeting," he'd say with that effortless charm, but I could hear the rehearsed rhythm in his voice. His phone was always locked now, never left on the kitchen counter like before, and those sudden business trips, always last minute, always convenient. He started wearing cologne I hadn't chosen for him. Little things. Small changes. But they piled up like bricks, building a wall between us. And I was on the outside, wondering what he was hiding behind it. The worst part was the doubt creeping in. I found myself replaying every word, every glance, questioning things I used to trust without thinking. I'd stare at him across the dinner table and wonder, is he still mine? Or is he already gone? The ache of not knowing was worse than anything I could imagine. But suspicion wasn't enough. I couldn't live in this fog of guessing, second-guessing, and pretending everything was fine. I needed to know. And once I decided that, I knew exactly what I had to do. I remember sitting alone at the kitchen table one night, staring at my phone, wondering if I was being paranoid. But then I thought, no. I know him too well. I know his patterns, his tells, the small things he doesn't even realize he does. He was hiding something. My heart ached, but my mind was sharp. I couldn't confront him, not yet. I needed proof. Not because I wanted a fight, I wanted the truth. Something solid I could hold in my hands when my heart wanted to believe his lies. That's when the idea came, quietly, almost like a whisper. A private investigator. I felt silly at first, like I was starring in some soap opera. But then I thought, why not? Why should I sit here twisting in uncertainty when I could know for sure? So I did it. I waited until he was on another business trip, and I made the call. My hands trembled dialing the number, but my voice was steady. I gave them all the details, dates, odd moments, gut feelings I couldn't shake. The woman on the other end of the line was kind, but professional. She didn't pity me. She listened, and that meant everything. When I hung up, I sat there for a long time, staring at nothing, listening to the hum of the refrigerator. It felt like a turning point. Like I'd taken the first step down a road I couldn't turn back from. But strangely, I felt calm, determined. I'd spent too long doubting myself. It was time to face reality, whatever it might be. Still, a small part of me hoped I was wrong. That maybe I'd wasted money, time, energy on nothing more than an overactive imagination. But deep down, I already knew. The days after that call felt heavier. Every little thing became a question mark. When his phone buzzed and he glanced at it with that slight smirk, was it her, or one of them? I started noticing details I'd never paid attention to before. The way he hummed when he was distracted. The nervous tap of his fingers on the steering wheel. I watched him closely, but never let on. Smiling when I needed to, nodding at his stories, all while my heart felt like it was holding its breath. Nights were the hardest. Lying next to him, pretending to sleep, feeling the weight of his body beside mine, and wondering where he'd really been. I would stare at the ceiling, listening to the soft sound of his breathing, and think, how did we get here? There was a time when I knew every corner of his heart, or at least I thought I did. Now there were shadows, secrets tucked away in the spaces between us. I couldn't reach them, but soon I wouldn't have to wonder. When the detective finally called back, my hands were ice cold. Her voice was calm, but I could hear it, that undertone. She had something. She asked if I was ready to meet. Ready. What a strange word. Are you ever ready to see the pieces of your life laid out in black and white? But I said yes. Because I needed to. Because the not knowing was starting to rot me from the inside out. So I put on a brave face, grabbed my keys, and drove to that meeting. I didn't know what I'd find. But I knew everything was about to change. I'll never forget the moment she slid that folder across the table. It felt heavier than paper should. My hands hesitated, fingertips brushing the edge, heart pounding so loud I could barely hear her speaking. The cafe was warm, smelled like fresh coffee and baked bread, but I was freezing. I opened it slowly, bracing myself, and there it was. Photos. Crisp, clear, undeniable. Mark with women I'd never seen, arms draped over shoulders, whispers exchanged in hotel lobbies, smiles that weren't meant for me. My stomach twisted so tight it hurt. There were receipts, too. Bookings for places he said he'd never been. Dinner dates on nights I sat home alone, waiting for him. Hotel rooms reserved in cities where no business meeting had ever taken place. It was all there, methodical and neat, like a punch to the chest over and over again. I felt hollow and furious all at once. How long had I been living beside a stranger? The detective watched me, quiet, giving me space to breathe. But I couldn't. I couldn't breathe. The shock lasted only a moment. It melted into something colder, something sharper. Rage. Not the screaming, throwing things kind. No, this was icy, precise. I realized I wasn't going to cry. I wasn't going to fall apart, not now. I'd given him trust, loyalty, years of my life, and he repaid me with lies. But here's the thing. Mark's whole world revolved around one fragile idea, his reputation, his spotless image. He guarded it like a treasure chest. And now? I held the crowbar. I thanked the detective, my voice steady, even though my hands still trembled. Walking out of that cafe into the sunlight felt surreal. The world went on around me, people laughing, cars honking, life moving forward. But I stood there for a moment, still. The truth was in my hands, and with it, a choice. I sat in my car for almost an hour, the folder resting on the passenger seat like it could burn a hole through the leather. I couldn't touch it anymore, but I couldn't look away. Every time I closed my eyes, those images flashed behind my eyelids, Mark's hand resting on another woman's back, the way he leaned in close, eyes soft, smile familiar. He used to look at me that way. The anger came in waves, but underneath it was something worse. Humiliation. I had been so blind. I thought about confronting him right then and there, marching into his office, throwing the photos on his desk, demanding answers. But what would that do? He'd lie. He'd twist it, turn it into something else, make me question my own sanity. Again. No. I needed to be smarter than that. He built this shiny, perfect image, carefully crafted over years. Polished smiles, awards on the wall, colleagues who thought he could do no wrong. That was his true love, not me. His reputation. And suddenly, I knew exactly where to hit him. I drove home in silence, fingers tight on the wheel, my mind already racing. I wasn't going to fall apart. Not for him, not anymore. If he wanted to destroy our marriage with secrets and betrayal, fine. But I would destroy what he valued most in return. I wouldn't yell. I wouldn't beg. I would be calm, precise, surgical. His career was going to crumble in his hands, just like he crumbled my trust. That thought steadied me, gave me a strange, cold clarity. When I pulled into the driveway, the sun was starting to set, streaks of pink and gold bleeding across the sky. Funny how beautiful the world looked, even when everything inside me felt shattered. But I wasn't broken, not yet. I was just getting started. That night, I sat at the kitchen table, the same place where I'd once waited for him with dinners gone cold and stories I never got to tell. But this time, I wasn't waiting. I spread the photos out, one by one, like puzzle pieces, dates, times, faces I'd never forget. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just felt this strange stillness settle over me, like I was standing on the edge of a cliff, and the wind had finally gone quiet. There was only one question left. how to make him fall. I opened my laptop and started organizing everything: receipts, hotel bookings, timestamps matching his calendar excuses. I created folders, labeled them carefully, color-coded them like I was preparing for a presentation. It was almost absurd how clinical it felt, but maybe that was what I needed: structure, order, control. For the first time in weeks, I felt powerful. I could feel the pieces aligning, and in that moment, I wasn't just the woman he betrayed. I was the one holding the knife. But even then, a whisper of doubt tried to creep in. Was I really going to do this? Ruin his career? His carefully built world? A small voice inside me asked if I could live with that. But another voice, louder, stronger, answered for me. He made this choice. He gambled everything. I was just collecting the debt. And the truth was, I didn't feel guilty. Not even a little. I sat back in my chair, staring at the neat digital folders glowing on the screen. All that was left was to decide when. Timing, after all, was everything. I never thought I'd be the kind of person who could plan someone's downfall. But here I was, sitting at my desk with a glass of wine, staring at spreadsheets filled with his lies. It felt surreal. I remembered all the times I'd supported him, the nights I stayed up late ironing his shirts before big meetings, the way I used to beam with pride when he spoke about his work. Now, that pride tasted bitter, and all I wanted was to take it away from him, piece by piece. I spent hours gathering everything: screenshots, bank statements, hotel confirmations. Each click of the mouse felt deliberate, like a small act of justice. I made sure every detail lined up: dates when he was supposed to be in meetings, but was actually with someone else. Trips billed to the company that had nothing to do with work. His secret life, now carefully cataloged in a folder with his name on it. I thought I'd feel satisfaction. Instead, I felt steady. Cold, but focused. Like I'd stepped outside myself and become someone else entirely. The next step came naturally. I created an anonymous email account, one he could never trace back to me. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a moment, heart racing before I started typing. The message wasn't dramatic. No anger, no revenge-soaked language. Just facts. Clean, simple, undeniable. I attached the dossier, double-checked every file, and drafted the subject line: for review, urgent HR concern. I sat back and read it over, again and again, until it was perfect. But I wasn't ready to send it. Not yet. Timing mattered. I needed the moment to be big, unforgettable. Something public, where he couldn't hide behind polished statements or quiet cover-ups. I wanted the mask to rip off in front of everyone who had ever admired him. I started researching his company calendar, something I'd never cared about before. Board meetings, shareholder presentations, leadership summits, they were all there, meticulously planned and proudly posted on the company's website. I found the perfect moment: an annual leadership conference, broadcast live, with all the senior executives in attendance. The thought of it made my pulse quicken. He'd be standing there, confident, maybe even smug. And then, in one breath, it would all fall apart. I could almost see it. The buzz of phones in the room, hushed murmurs turning into gasps, his smile faltering as people exchanged glances, scrolling through the scandal unraveling in their inboxes. His carefully curated image crumbling, not in private, but under the harsh lights of the stage. That vision kept me steady. It wasn't about cruelty. It was about truth. About making sure the man who lied so easily would finally feel exposed, vulnerable, stripped bare for everyone to see. But even in those moments of cold planning, something tugged at me. Memories of lazy Sunday mornings, his hand warm on my back, coffee in bed, whispered jokes no one else understood. For a moment, I let myself grieve what we'd lost, the life I thought we had. But that grief only sharpened my resolve. He chose this. I was just making sure the world knew who he really was. I took a deep breath, saved the draft, and closed my laptop. It was all set. All that remained was patience. A few more days, and everything would be in motion. And strangely, for the first time in weeks, I felt light. The night before the conference, I barely slept. Not because of nerves, but because my mind wouldn't stop calculating every detail. I checked the timing one last time. The email was scheduled to send at 10:03 a.m., exactly 3 minutes after the keynote began. I imagined him on stage, thanking the audience, flashing that rehearsed smile. And then, silence. The kind that swallows a room whole. I wondered if he'd feel it first in his gut, that cold drop of dread before anyone said a word. I sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker in the distance. The world outside felt so big, so busy, and here I was, holding this tiny thread that could unravel it all. My heart ached for the woman I used to be, trusting, hopeful, naive. But she was gone now, replaced by someone sharper, stronger, and maybe a little colder. I didn't recognize her fully yet, but I liked her. She didn't flinch. She didn't make excuses. She finished what she started. By morning, I felt strangely calm. I brewed coffee, fed the cat, went through the motions like any other day. I even texted Mark a simple, "Good luck today," watching as he replied with a heart emoji and a cheerful, "Thank you, babe." The audacity. He had no idea that by the time he stepped off that stage, everything he built would be ashes. I closed my phone, took a deep breath, and smiled to myself. The trap was set. All that was left was to watch it spring. At exactly 10:03 a.m., I sat on the couch, coffee in hand, watching the live stream on my laptop. Mark stood on stage, polished and confident, his suit crisp, his voice smooth as ever. He was thanking the team, talking about integrity, leadership, the future. I almost laughed. The hypocrisy was so thick it felt suffocating. I watched his smile, those familiar gestures I used to adore, and felt nothing. Just a quiet curiosity about what it would look like when the mask cracked. Then it happened, right on cue. The first ripple, a shift in the room, executives glancing down at their phones, brows furrowing, whispered exchanges. Mark noticed. I could see it in the flicker of his eyes, the slight stumble over his next sentence. He pushed on, but his voice lost its warmth. He knew something was off. I sipped my coffee, heart steady, breath slow. My hands didn't tremble this time. I just watched. More phones lit up. Side conversations grew louder. The moderator leaned in to whisper something in Mark's ear, and I saw it, that moment of pure, raw panic. His smile faltered. He cleared his throat, tried to recover, but it was too late. The room wasn't listening anymore. They were reading, clicking through photos, hotel confirmations, receipts, all neatly arranged, all undeniable. I imagined their thoughts: disbelief, shock, disappointment. The perfect man exposed for what he really was. They cut the live stream without warning. The screen went black. I closed my laptop and leaned back, exhaling slowly. It was done. The fall had begun, and he never even saw it coming. I imagined the chaos unfolding behind those closed doors. Mark, surrounded by faces that once admired him, now staring with judgment and disbelief. Questions thrown at him, each one heavier than the last. HR pulling him aside, legal teams already whispering in corners. He would try to talk his way out of it. I knew him too well. Smooth words, practiced apologies. But this time, no story could fix what was laid bare in black and white. There was no spin clever enough to erase betrayal caught on camera. I wondered if he thought of me in that moment. If he realized, in that flash of panic, exactly who had placed the knife between his ribs. Did he feel betrayed, angry, or just terrified that the empire he built was crumbling at his feet? Maybe all of it. Maybe none of it. I didn't care. For years, I had swallowed my own doubts, my own pain, hiding them behind smiles and small talk. Today, he was the one swallowing hard, tasting fear. My phone buzzed once, then again. Messages from mutual friends. Polite curiosity, veiled concern. "Have you heard what's happening at Mark's company?" I typed back a simple, "No, what's going on?" It felt almost cruel, but strangely liberating. I didn't owe anyone explanations. I didn't owe him anything. Not anymore. I spent so long playing the supportive wife, the quiet listener. That role didn't fit me anymore. I'd outgrown it. The world would talk. Gossip would swirl. But I felt, still, like the eye of a storm. Everything else was chaos. But inside, I was calm. By the afternoon, the news had leaked beyond the boardroom. Industry blogs picked it up first. Anonymous tips, scandalous headlines, whispers turning into public roars. Mark's name was everywhere, but not the way he wanted. I watched it unfold on my phone, scrolling through articles with clinical detachment. Photos I had gathered were now plastered on news sites, his face caught between charm and shame. His spotless reputation was in tatters, shredded in real time. I thought I'd feel exhilarated, victorious, maybe even smug. But mostly I felt done. Like I'd just closed a chapter that had dragged on too long. My phone lit up with calls from him, first once, then twice, then over and over. Desperation ringing through unanswered screens. I didn't pick up. I didn't need to hear his explanations, his apologies. There were no words left that mattered. The silence between us said more than any conversation ever could. I sat by the window again, this time with a glass of wine instead of coffee. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows across the floor. I thought of the years I spent building him up, supporting his dreams, standing in the background while he took the spotlight, and here I was now, watching that spotlight burn him. I wasn't proud of what I'd done, but I wasn't sorry either. Some truths demand to be seen, no matter how ugly they are. And yet, I knew this wasn't the end. The fallout was only beginning. For him, and maybe for me too. The next morning felt different. Lighter. I woke up without that weight in my chest, without wondering where he was, or what lie he'd tell me next. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. It felt like mine again. Every corner, every creak in the floorboards. I made coffee slowly, savoring the scent, the warmth of the mug in my hands. No rush, no forced small talk over breakfast. Just silence, peaceful and clean. I sat at the table and let myself breathe. My phone buzzed again. More missed calls from Mark, voicemails I didn't bother listening to. I could almost hear his voice in my head, frantic, apologizing, trying to explain the unexplainable. I deleted them all without hesitation. He'd had years to choose honesty, and he didn't. Now it was my turn to choose. And I chose freedom. I didn't owe him forgiveness. I didn't owe him understanding. I owed myself peace, and for the first time I was claiming it. I spent the rest of the day doing something I hadn't done in years, thinking about myself. No schedules, no obligations, just me. I pulled out old notebooks filled with dreams I'd shelved for far too long, travel plans, business ideas, things I used to imagine before life became about supporting someone else's climb. I wasn't bitter, I was curious. What could my life look like if I stopped standing in the wings and stepped onto my own stage? Outside, the world moved on. Inside, something settled in me. Not anger, not revenge, but relief. I wasn't stuck anymore, and I realized I was finally free to write the next part of my story. In the afternoon, I took a long walk, no destination, just following wherever my feet wanted to go. The air was crisp, the kind that wakes you up from the inside out. I noticed things I'd forgotten to see. The rustling of leaves, the warmth of the sun on my face, the simple rhythm of my own breath. For so long, I'd been holding tension in my body I didn't even realize was there. Now it was unraveling, like tight knots slowly loosening with every step forward. Mark kept calling. Messages poured in, each one more desperate than the last. He wanted to talk. He wanted explanations, apologies, answers to questions I no longer cared to ask. But I felt nothing for him anymore. Not anger, not pity, just distance. A clean, quiet distance that felt better than any confrontation ever could. I paused by a park bench and sat down, watching children play, strangers laugh. The world was full of lives untouched by his lies, and mine was about to be one of them. For years, I thought my story was tied to his, that my worth was measured by how well I fit into the life he built. But sitting there, in that moment of absolute stillness, I realized I was wrong. My story had chapters he never even bothered to read, passages full of dreams, risks, and courage I'd set aside to keep him comfortable. I wouldn't do that anymore. I wouldn't shrink to fit someone else's narrative. I was ready to take up space. As the sky darkened and city lights flickered on, I felt something deep in my bones. Possibility. Not fear, not regret. Just open space. And the freedom to fill it however I chose. That night, as I settled into bed alone, my phone buzzed one last time. A message from Mark. I hesitated for a moment before opening it. His words were long, tangled, filled with regret and desperation. He begged for forgiveness, asked why I had done this to him, like he couldn't piece together the years of small betrayals, the cracks he'd carved into us one lie at a time. He still didn't understand. He thought it was about revenge. But it was never about revenge. It was about truth. I stared at the screen, reading his words over and over, feeling nothing but a soft, tired calm. There was nothing left to say. No explanation he could offer would matter. And no explanation I could give would make him see what he had never cared to look at. I tapped out one simple reply, my fingers steady, my heart clear. You destroyed our marriage. I destroyed your career. We're even. I hit send. Watched the message disappear into the silence between us. I turned off my phone and set it face down on the nightstand. The room was quiet, but not lonely, just still. I pulled the covers up, feeling their weight, soft and grounding. For the first time in years, I wasn't wondering where he was or what lie he'd tell next. For the first time, I was exactly where I wanted to be, with myself, at peace, with nothing hidden in shadows. As I closed my eyes, I felt it deep in my chest. Not victory, not vengeance, freedom. Pure, steady, unapologetic freedom.